Okay, hi. So, in honor of Women's History Month, which I realize is ending today, hopefully, as I'm putting this up, I would like to make a video where we're talking about books that aren't really celebrating women's rights, but are celebrating women's wrongs. So, here are a list of books that I've read in the past few months that have questionable morals or ethics in our female protagonists or other important characters. So the first entry on this list is We Love the Nightlife. This is a vampire thriller-ish type book that is looking at the messy relationship between two female vampires in a dual timeline in London. It's not just dual timeline, but it's dual perspective. So you're following both the vampire that was made and the vampire maker, and you're seeing their perspectives in the past and present as the vampire that was made is kind of starting to question the entirety of her relationship with her maker and is looking to see if there's a way out of this relationship. And then you're seeing the past of like the maker finding her and deciding that she was going to be the person that she turned into a vampire, and also the maker's history. And so it's a look at a toxic relationship. So the vampire that was made, which I'm so bad with protagonist names, so she's the American vampire, so I'm going to refer to her as that. The American vampire thinks that she's morally superior to the other one. She has morals that she's put in place around the kills that she makes and the type of people that she'll take. And she considers herself like a girl's girl, where she's not going to murder a woman. And as the story goes on and she begins to try to determine ways of leaving or unravel the story of her maker, she starts to push her own boundaries of morality and toes the line of justifying those things. And then you also follow the perspective of the maker, whose morals might have always been in question, but the length and the extent of that is something that is revealed to you over time. Um, this book is like fun, kind of, I don't want to say trashy, but like it's like that fun kind of like don't take it too serious sort of read. It's a recent release. It came out in 2024, but the audiobook is it's not that great. You have a British protagonist and you have an American protagonist, and so you have two voice actors, and one I believe is one's British and one's American. But then when they're doing each other's voices, the British one attempts to do an American accent and the American one attempts to do a British accent, and they're both really bad at the other one. And then so you'll see like their accents sort of waver and be really inconsistent, but honestly it goes with the vibe of the book because the book itself, you don't take it too seriously. Okay, the next one, a little bit different. It is The Private Life of Mrs. Sharma. So this is a contemporary read that takes place, I believe, in 2011. And you're following a woman who I wouldn't call middle-aged, but she's in her 40s. She has a teenage son, and her husband, and she lives in India, and her husband is living out of the country in order to attempt to make more money for them. And during that time, her husband's parents leave to go take care of, to go stay with like his sister in America or Canada or the United States or Canada. And she's now left much more lonely with a teenage son who's rebelling against these traditional norms that she sets in her household. And she meets a younger man on the train. And The relationship begins harmless enough, but as things go on, you begin to kind of question how reliable of a narrator she is, and how much of her behavior she's willing and able to justify um, through that relationship, but also in her relationship with her husband, with her in-laws, and with her son, and the behaviors that her son has and how she reacts to them. The ending caught me off guard. It did not go in a direction that I expected, and I think that that could be jarring for a lot of readers, but it's kind of this domestic, contemporary slice of life. I think that with a lot of domestic thrillers, you kind of question the reliability of the narrator, but I think that's less so in a contemporary. So it's an interesting dynamic at play. Okay, the next one, The Lamb by Lucy Rose. This is a recent release, and this is considered a folk horror. I don't really understand subgenres of horror, but it is rural in where it takes place, and quiet in its telling. So I guess that's what makes it folk. But in this, you're following the story of a woman and her daughter, and it's told through the perspective of the daughter, who is right at the cusp of being a young adult. She's, I think, anywhere between 10 to 12 ish, and she's it's right at the edge of coming of age, where she's not really like a young child anymore. And they've always lived together, the two of them, and they live in what seems to be a very rundown home in the middle of nowhere. And what sets them apart is that they eat people. So they will have people get lost in the woods around where they live, and they call them strays. And these strays will show up to their house, and then they kill and eat them. And it's their little secret. But one day, a stray comes and doesn't leave, and the dynamics and consequences of that are what you see play out in this book. I think it being told through the perspective of a child makes it interesting when you consider the ethics and morals of it, because this young girl knows that what they're doing is different, but she doesn't see it as wrong. So their killing and eating of people is just a part of her life, and it's a part of her life she has to be quiet about, but she's always supposed to be quiet. So the parroting of the parent. But then you watch the mother and her thirst for people, and thirst for blood, and thirst for sustenance through humans, and where that kind of leads, and her like lustful behaviors around this. This is not a book for people who need to shy away from gore and obviously cannibalism, because that's at the center of it. But I found the kind of place it goes to very devastating, and really liked the way that the book itself was wrapped up. Clearly, ethics and morals are on the table, but I also find it to be like a really good new book. Okay, my last one, another recent release, Hungerstone by Kat Dunn. So this is a Carmilla retelling. I guess this would make it the second vampire novel on the list, though I think that Carmilla is interesting in that it never really the concept of the vampire coming to play does not happen until the very end, when you get the origin story of Carmilla. And this book takes it into a little bit different of an avenue of like where the book ends, and it's much more focused on the protagonists as opposed to Carmilla. So the way it's different from Carmilla is that everyone's kind of aged up. So it's not a teenager daughter and her father. It's a couple that's been together for a decade, and they go away to this new estate that he has purchased that he's going to have a shooting party at, and she has to get it ready and prepared for this. And just like in Carmilla, a woman is found in a carriage, and there's no one knows where she's going, and no one knows how she ended up there, and she's a very mysterious character. And you begin to see it's a very close first person perspective. So you see her thoughts and feelings about Carmilla, her thoughts and feelings about her husband, and then her thoughts and feelings about this much younger friend that she has. And Carmilla's influence, or and that's, I think, one of the questions you have throughout reading this is it Carmilla's influence over this protagonist that has her start questioning everything around her, changing her behaviors, and playing with her own morals? Or is it that she had this in her this whole time, and Carmilla just kind of unleashed it with these few questions and words and ways of going about the world that influenced your protagonist into like finding her true self? She's a woman of means and status, and she has freedom because of that, but she also feels very trapped by her existence. She's trapped by the notion that she was never able to have children. She's trapped by this notion of like losing her beauty and and like being not understanding or being required to understand like the role that her husband plays in the world around them. And is he doing good or bad things, and should she trust him, and should she trust this friend? And you get this really close narrative that's like very almost suffocating in some ways, as she kind of questions her total ideology and where that questioning leads to. So yeah, I would say those are the 4 books that I wanted to chat through. I've, of course, read plenty of other books that have questionable morals and the female leads at the root, but these were some that I had read recently that I wanted to chat about, and that's all I have for this video. So until next time, happy reading.